Hi, this time I'm coming to you from Easton, Pennsylvania, and today we are going to take a look at block 4 in our sampler quilt, which is a log cabin. I thought, oh boy, this is going to be easy, but it is easy to sew, but getting the measurements right is not easy. A log cabin block is supposed to be 14.5 inches, and we are making it at 12 and 18. So what I had to do was count. There are 7 equal sized stripes or squares across, and when you divide 12 or 18 by 7, you get some outrageous number. 2.596348. And if you round it to 2.5, either your block becomes half an inch too small at the end, half an inch too long. And if your 1/4 inch seams, like mine, are imperfect, you're in even more trouble. So what I'm doing, just so you know in advance, is I am making all of these the closest I can come, and then I am making the final dark strips wider so that at the end you can trim them down to get the exact correct size you need. So once you've cut, and the cutting instructions will be in the written directions. This is my 12-inch block. I switched colors. I'm going with blue and yellow for the next 3 blocks. And you can see that it's light and dark, not so dark, mostly maybe not so light. So I did by color, and I used the same color for 2 strips on each side. You don't have to do that. You can go very scrappy, especially if you're very careful with the light and dark. It looks beautiful if you make every single piece a different color. Traditionally, the center of a log cabin block is red, representing the hearth, the fire, the warmth in the center of the home. So if you like traditional and you want to go that route, that's what it means, and that's what many people do. Now I'm going to show you a bit of how to make this, and you're going to see how easy it is once it's cut. These are, I'm bringing over some scraps. They go with nothing. They were in my scrap basket. And you start with a square, and that's the center, that's the middle. And then you have another square in your light color, and you sew that on. And when you're working with the block, obviously it's not going to be at the top when it goes through the sewing machine. It's going to be on the side when it goes through the sewing machine. So you'll sew it on. I always press my seam toward my newest piece. So I started with this, I pressed my seam this way, and now I place my center block below my first light. And now I'm going to sew on my second light, and these don't have to be the same, just light. So I'm going to place it here. I'm going to do my best to get a 1/4 inch seam, and then I'm going to open this up and press toward the outer. Not pressing toward the dark, I'm pressing toward the outer. And the reason is I will have in each block, each piece of the block, fewer seams. Now, if you want to be sure you're going okay, you can square this up right away. Just make sure it's square, check these lines and all the way around. I've started in a clockwise direction, and I'm going to continue that way through the whole block. So now I take my next dark strip, and I sew it from this edge over. And it's not cut perfectly, and I'm not worried about that right now. So I will sew that on here fold it down, and press toward the black. I'm going to continue going clockwise. I have another piece like that. Sorry, another piece like that. Sew it on. And by the way, if you're not perfect here, once you see this, you can take your rotary cutter before you move any further along and just even that up. So for instance, here, when I open this and press it, I can just cut that off. These are just scraps. I wasn't being too careful. And you can see now I've created my center square. Continuing clockwise, I put on my next light, press toward it, put on a second light. So the lights are always across the top and down from 1 o'clock to 6 o'clock, or down what for you will be, I'm trying to think, your right when you're sewing. And then this will go on here, and then keeping going around, I can add, this is just a hunk of scrap, that, and then here, until I've used up all of my strips. Now at the end, you can see that these blacks are bigger than everything else. When I square up, and I happen to have, and will have with me at the library, a nice 12.5-inch ruler for those of you who are making blocks that are to finish at 12. If you're making the bigger block that finishes at 18, you can use your cutting board to measure. But I'm not going to stick this in the middle and move this over. I'm going to take everything I have to cut off that final dark one that we've made wider. And I want to go back to my little blue and yellow and guess that you did not notice that this is a 1/4 inch wider than every other strip. It really doesn't matter. And that's what got this to 12.5 inches, because my measurements aren't perfect, and my cutting isn't perfect, and my seams aren't perfect. This is what it looks like on the back. Hope you can see that. So each thing is pressed to the outside. It looks nice and neat on the back. And that will be your log cabin block. Have fun. Thanks, Doug.